we are into this seminar called Eating 5 Secrets. So my name is Andy Ng. I welcome you to my seminar. So I've been doing training and coaching since the year 2001. So it has been 24 years already. And since the year 2001, I have actually taught many topics. From the year 2016 onwards, I tend to talk more about the Chinese topics, but I talk in English. So for example, I've been teaching the Sun Tzu Art of War and 36 Stratagems since the year 2009. Currently, I'm also a certified health coach and also an MOE trainer. I'm also an associate trainer with a few companies, notably CCISG and Center for Behavioral Science. So when people talk about eating, they normally think about eating as something very difficult to understand. And not to worry, one of the biggest users of eating is actually in WeChat. And I've written the first book in the world. It is currently still the one and only book in the world about practical WeChat marketing. And just in the last few days of June, I just published and printed my second book in my life. This book is called Eating Explained. This book, you can get it from me directly. You can get easily 43% discount. If you buy from Amazon, you'll be $34 Singapore dollars, and yet to add in the freight cost, that will add up to about $40 over. But if you get from me, it's only $20. So it's actually more than half price. This brown cover is the Amazon cover because Amazon design their own cover, so they also print it themselves, right? So this is the print in Singapore. You can get it from me easily. So let's watch this short video first.
And I guess the oldest culture they say is Egypt at 8,000.
埃及就是不好意思，但是呢，文化没有断过流的，始终传承下来的只有中国。
But the Chinese civilization is
So this is your original form, right? Yeah, this is a Yad文化。对，是这样。
就我们这些人也是原来的人，
and people like us
黑头发、黄皮肤，
we trace back to
传承下
5,000
来
years
的。
ago.
我们叫龙的传人。
Red hair, yellow skin. We call ourselves the inherited people going down from dragon.
To understand that the Chinese culture is not the oldest in the world, the Chinese civilization is actually the fourth oldest. But the Chinese civilization is the one and only that has been uninterrupted and still continuing today. So for example, the type of people that we have are still the same since 5,000 years ago, whereas the other earlier civilization, notably the one in Mexico, the one in Iraq, and in Egypt, they have all stopped and no more already. They have no more language, no more culture. So from here, you can see Chinese culture is very long, easily 4,000-5,000 years ago. And among the Chinese culture, many people will wonder what's so special about Chinese culture. Actually, the biggest special thing about Chinese culture is this thing called eating. Eating, some people like to use an old word called I Ching. I Ching, and some people translate it as a book of changes. However, today we are all using Hanyu Pinyin. Why? Because China is moving towards Hanyu Pinyin. So if you go to China today, some cities, they stop using the English names. For example, there's no road or West Road. So it's Xi-Lu. So if you do not understand Lu is road, then sorry, then you're as good as a blind man and deaf man. You can understand because they've converted all to Hanyu Pinyin. So let's use the term eating instead of I Ching because I Ching is not Hanyu Pinyin, right? So today in this short seminar, I'm going to cover 5 topics. First is talking about this thing called the coming 9th cycle luck. They call it 九运 in Chinese. And I call it the eating era. What is this exactly? Yeah. So I have been invited as one of the speakers on the 16th of July, Sunday, from 2 to 6. And I talk about the mobile numerology, and then this lady, she's going to talk about the 九运. So understand, her talk is in Chinese. I have actually conducted such a talk before in the year 2020, actually, 2020, the COVID year. We actually conducted this. I have actually also translated some of the materials into English. So today I want to share with everyone these 9th cycle like 九运. What is this? So we call this is the eating era already. We call this the eating era. What is this exactly? So you give me a little while. Let me go to my the other side, huh? And I'm going to show to everyone, explain to you what is this Yi Jing era. Okay, you can see me, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, right? So we are talking about this Jiu Yin. Jiu Yin starts from where? First, you must know that is according to Yi Jing, there's always a 20-year cycle. Currently, we are at the tail end of the current cycle called the Earth cycle. So we are currently actually in the Earth cycle. But from the 4th of February 2024 onwards to 2043, we are into this 20-year cycle called the Li. So in Chinese, it's actually the Li. So this is Li, and Li in English is simply translated as fire. So we are going into this fire era of total 20 years. Currently, we're at the tail of the Earth cycle. So Earth, you will have things like construction doing very well. But understand that we are going to the fire cycle, fire era. And what is fire? Fire, if you look at the Yi Jing, if you look at the Gua, by the way, this is my book. You can get it from me directly. It's only $20. If I turn to page 25, and it explains what is this Li Gua. So understand this fire is actually made up of what, right? So let me draw it for you so that you can actually see. So the fire is actually made up of 3 lines. Right? So you see the center line is actually the short line, and these 2 are the long lines. So we call this the long line, we call it the yang, and with the short lines, we call it the yin, so-called the broken lines. So it's made up of yin and made up of yang. So, and in this, understand that the yang is about moving, and this is the yin line is about not moving. So understand that the yang is about this thing called can be seen, right? And the yin is actually about the unseen. It's something that you cannot see. So we're in this fire era. Understand that this is actually a Chinese called Xu. That means inside is empty. If you look at this Gua, this 3 lines trigram, we call it trigram. Realize the center is actually virtual. It's actually not moving. It's actually empty. In fact, when you look at the fire, realize that actually the center is actually not moving. So when firemen want to put off fire, they will actually wet the surrounding, because the surrounding are moving. As long as you wet the surrounding, fire cannot burn indefinitely. Fire will sooner or later will stop burning. So you just wet the surrounding, the fire, the end finish burning will stop naturally, right? So when the fire era, what does it mean? It means that actually we are into something that is quite virtual. That means anything that you cannot see will be very, very important. First of all, let me look at some of the attributes of the Li trigram, right? So the first attribute is about this thing called, fire is something about bright, right? Correct, huh? Fire is also about this thing called clarity, right? Because you must understand the olden days, there is no electricity. So when you want to see something, you have to really rely on the fire. Fire also about beauty. That's correct, huh? When you can see someone, of course, it's beautiful lah. Anyway, if you look at the fire, isn't it beautiful, right? Fire also about this thing called cooking, right? Because with fire, you can cook, right? And today we talk about cooking stories. It's still the same as cooking. And then fire is also about this thing called, it's actually quite hot. And fire in a human being will represent fire in the belly. Fire in the belly. So people call it the passion. And passion will have this thing called creativity. Correct? With fire, got creativity. So in other words, when you're in this fire era, if you are industries doing all these things, you will do very well. So what industries? For example, you're in the creative industry. You are a singer, you are a dancer, you actually can create, you can write stories, can write scripts. And you're in the hot industry, for example, something very trendy. You're in the passion industry. For example, you tell stories, you're very passionate. In the beauty industry, you do skincare, hair care. You're in the cooking industry, for example, in the F&B, right? If you're in the bright industry, for example, you do neon lights, you do LED lights. You're in the clarity industry. Example, you're in the spectacle business, giving people clarity, right? Or you also can be a counselor, you could be a coach, you could be a psychiatrist, whereby you give people clarity. Example, a coach or trainer is also giving people clarity. So when you're in all these traits, you'll be actually doing quite okay, doing well. Also understand that the Li Gua is also about this thing called the Chinese called Zhongnu, right? So Zhongnu is basically about middle-aged woman, middle-aged woman. So if you are 35 and above, middle age, I know what's middle age, right? Roughly middle age is 35 to about 60. Yeah? If you are a woman belong to this age, from next year until 2024 until 2043, you'll be doing very well. In fact, women will be the bosses, and many men got to work for women. And if at home you have a wife or girlfriend that's around this age, please treat them well, because they will be your boss. Because this is the Li era, actually they will actually be doing very well. So the men simply got to work under them. Sorry. So the Li is also about this thing called the East. It's all about the East. So the East is, some people wonder, where is the East? Okay, if you look at the world map, the East is actually anywhere from Russia onwards. From Russia eastwards will be actually considered the East. So that includes Central Asia, that includes many countries like Mongolia, China, Japan, of course. Of course, that includes Singapore. We are in Southeast Asia, where the East. So in the East, will do very well. And if you look at the East, which is the biggest, which two are the biggest countries? Of course, it is China and India. But India is somewhere towards the south. So actually not really counted. It's actually China that is more counted. So China will do very well. And when China do well, now you already see China doing very well. But let me tell you, many people predict that China will reach its peak in what year? Will reach the peak in the year 2035. And in the year 2035, China will be the #1 in everything in the world. Some of you will find it hard to believe. But if you were to study history or go into Google, you realize that China was the #1 country in the whole world for actually more than 1,500 years. For example, during the Han Dynasty, during the Song Dynasty, during the Qing Dynasty, for about 120 years under the 3 solid emperors, the Qing Dynasty, GDP is 25% of the world. So by the year 2035, China will become the world. So today we are in 2023, right? So we still have about 10 plus years. So it pays for us to get closer to Chinese culture. And among Chinese culture, of course, eating is the oldest. It's the beginning of Chinese culture. The study of Chinese culture, history, and literature, we call it sinology. So sinology starts from eating. So many people may not understand. They think eating is something about religion. Okay, let me go to the next topic. Why really eating is considered religious, right? Why is religious? Many people say, oh, Andy, your book about eating, I cannot touch it because I am a Christian. Understand that eating is not a religion. But why do people consider eating a religion? I think it has to do with this 八卦图, right? This 八卦 diagram, you can see it very clearly here. So the Taoism, you go to the monk, actually he's actually wearing with this, right? And so Taoism, they adopt this as a symbol, and many people say, oh, then in that case, Andy, you actually talk about Taoism, that's religion. That is actually not a right concept. Just like some Christianity uses the cross, right? Don't tell me now you see a cross, that means there must be Christianity, cannot be, right? So why Taoism is they use the eating concept? Because actually eating is actually about nature. It's the study of nature. And Taoism is about nature. When we talk about nature, we need to harmonize with the nature. We need to have integration with nature. So eating is actually talking about such thing. Can you integrate with nature? Can you be in harmony with nature? And nature is not something artificial, right? So eating talks about being in nature, and Taoism talks about going with the flow. So these two actually seems to have the same basic concepts. That's why people will say, oh, eating is religion. But understand that Taoism is actually an application of eating. Please understand that. So the other big application of eating is actually in this thing called martial arts. Kung Fu, Chinese Kung Fu. Talking about Chinese Kung Fu, many people, some people will ask me, Andy, what's so special about Chinese Kung Fu? Well, understand that Chinese Kung Fu is actually using I Ching concepts. Because I Ching is talking about harmony, going to flow. So I Ching is talking about win with least effort. So understand that the Sanzhu Art of War or Sun Tzu Bing Fa is an application of I Ching, and the number one concept of Sun Tzu Bing Fa is win without fighting. It's actually from I Ching, go with the flow and win with the least efforts. So martial arts, if you look at the Chinese word, Wu Su, right? Wu Su, some people, of course, in English, this is Wu Su, right? How do you write the Su? I think it's S-U, is it? Okay, anyway, in Chinese, this is how you write the Wu, right? Wu Su, If you look at the word Wu, what is the meaning of Chinese martial arts or Chinese Kung Fu, or even going to the war? So you look at in China, when they go to the war, actually, when you fight another person or fight another country, is actually to have peace. If you look at this word carefully, let me go to the next flip chart. Wu, how do you write the word Wu? Actually, there's a zi here. Zi means stop, right? And this is actually ge. This one is actually ge, right? Ge means actually, it's actually called fight, like in English. So when you use the word Wu, it means to stop the fight. So in other words, war is to have peace. War is to stop the fight. You know, people are fighting for power, fighting for supremacy, and to solve the problem, you go into war. War is not to occupy another country, not to eliminate them. No such things. War is actually for peace. If you look at Chinese Kung Fu, it's actually really for peace. If you watch the movie, I think one of the best movies talking about Chinese Kung Fu, the recent movies that you can easily watch on YouTube and Netflix, must be the Ip Man movies, part 1, 2, 3, 4. If you look at part 2, Ip Man is part 2 or part 3, I can't remember. I think it's part 3. Ip Man is able to beat Mike Tyson, the world champion in boxing. And Mike Tyson is very strong, very powerful. And Ip Man is quite short, relatively short compared to him, and not so powerful. But in the end, we all know who won, right? Ip Man won and Mike Tyson lost. Because the Chinese Kung Fu is using this concept called harmony, go with the flow. So the biggest application of I Ching actually is in martial arts. If you look at Kung Fu, it's actually to harmonize the flow. When somebody attacks you, you're supposed to deflect his attack, right? Deflect his attack. And you're supposed to go with the flow with the least effort. You don't kill, fight. The least effort, you actually hit where it is his weakest spot. That's Kung Fu, right? Those of you watching in Facebook right now, you may know about Chinese Kung Fu. So you agree what I say. Kung Fu is not about using a lot of force fight. No. Kung Fu is about using the least efforts to beat your opponent. So Chinese Kung Fu is definitely that. And this is definitely an I Ching concept. So in fact, my friend who is actually into martial arts actually tell me that actually they will use the Ba Gua diagram, and they'll use the 8 trigrams, the concepts of 8 trigrams in their strokes, in their fight. For example, one of them is this thing called Xin. Xin simply means win, which means that when you fight with another person, you are supposed to very fast like the wind and can penetrate anything. I understand that I'm already 60 years old. I'm not a Kung Fu person, so I can't really fight. But I can tell the concept. Basically, the biggest application of I Ching in the whole world actually is in Kung Fu. The next thing is in warfare. Talk about war, and many people would think, oh, China is aggressive, fighting with other countries. But understand that if you look at history, China is the country that was actually attacked by other people. China seldom occupied other countries. If you look at the entire 4,000-5,000 years history, and you realize that if you look at the last 1,000 years, where Beijing has been the capital, Beijing has been the capital for 5 dynasties, right? The first out of the 5 governments, only one government is the Han Chinese. The rest are non-Chinese. The first government to establish in Beijing as the capital must be the Liao dynasty, the Liao Cao, right? Liao people are from the northeastern part. Actually, they are not Han Chinese. They occupy China and use Beijing as a capital, right? Basically, they occupy the northern part. The next one is the Qing dynasty. Qing actually after that became Manchuria, again from the northeast of China. And they at first it's Shenyang, but later on they moved to Beijing as the capital. After that, you have the Qing. After that, you will have the Mongolian dynasty or the Yuan dynasty. So look at these three dynasties out of about 300 years have been using Beijing as a capital. So they occupy China, attack China. And especially the Mongolians, they used China as a base and they went to attack all the way, occupy Central Asia, all the way go to Europe. So you see the Mongolians, they are not Han Chinese, right? And they occupy China, expand. So it's not that China attack other countries, it's actually Mongolians attack other countries. Next, you have the Ming dynasty, that is a Han Chinese, that lasted about 200 plus years. The last one is the Qing dynasty, that definitely is the Manchurian, right? So look at the history. The Manchurian Qing dynasty expanded China boundaries to include Xinjiang province, to include the Tibet and some other places. So you see, actually, if you say the Chinese are aggressive occupy other countries, it's actually not true. It's the non-Chinese, but somehow in the end, they got assimilated to the Chinese culture. So that's the thing about Yi Jing. So I already explained the few concepts. First thing is that the Yi Jing era that will start from 2024 to 2043. If you are interested to get the English notes for this, I can send to you. Please Facebook message me or put in the comments in Facebook. I will send to you because I got these notes 3 years ago, right? When this master Li Chenwei, Nancy Lee was doing a talk in Chinese, I already typed in English on the spot. It was shown on the screen for people. So second, I already covered how Yi Jing becomes a religion, because religion is about going to flow, especially Taoism, right? So the application of Yi Jing in Kung Fu. Next one, talk about why people resist Yi Jing. Many people will tell me, Andy, your book not very good. Why you can't write this type of book? Andy, you are a professional, you are a trainer. Why you don't do something superstition, something that is religious, something that is actually not scientific? That's very funny. These people are all resisting Yi Jing. So firstly, Yi Jing is scientific. What is scientific? Scientific is anything that you can verify for yourself. If I tell you I use Yi Jing and I predict that Taman will be the president of Singapore, of course you can verify for yourself. Not only that, I predict that there will not be a contest because the other guy called Richard Goh, is it his Richard Goh? Not Richard Goh, sorry. Somebody cannot remember his name. Anyway, the other guy will not qualify. And then something can verify. I can also easily to predict tomorrow's weather, Saturday, from 2 to 4 p.m. will it rain in this place called the, for example, the Tuche area. I can use Yi Jing and you can verify. So it is not superstition. You don't have to believe what I say. You just have to believe your own verification, because Yi Jing is about the nature. Why people resist Yi Jing? Because they like to think Yi Jing as religion. So it's religion. And then second thing is that why they resist Yi Jing is actually holding a mirror for you to see yourself. You know, the Gua, the 64 Gua or whatever Gua you have, it's actually showing you the situations in your life. And people in this world don't like to see themselves in the mirror. When there are problems, they like to go to outside and say, it's the other people that are causing me all the problems. Understand that these are all in Chinese. And then my book is in English because I can read in Chinese and I write in English. I make it easier for people, right? If you study the 64 hexagram, you realize it can be rather complex. At the end of the day, when you use this thing called Yi Jing Zhan Bu, in English we call it divination, we are actually showing you the situation, holding a mirror for you to see yourself. People don't like to see themselves. When there's a problem, they always say, oh, it is due to some other people's problem. I'm late because the MRT is late. Yi Jing teaches us one and only thing. How do you read a 6-line hexagram? So for example, this is one trigram, right? This is actually the Kun Gua. And below, I have the Qian Gua, right? I have another 3-line trigram. So combined, it's called a hexagram. So Yi Jing is asking us to read from below. Always start below. So below is you, your situation, your inner world. Outside is the others. So when there's a problem, I Ching is telling you how to solve a problem. Look internally. It is your problem that causes the outside problem. The world outside is just a mirror of what you have inside. And some people say, how can this be true, right? I'm late, the MRT delay, and blah, blah, blah. The point is, before they set up your journey, did you go and check? Is there anything that can cause a delay? Did you plan your time properly so you have some buffer in case you're late? You have not done any of the things and you're just relying on luck, and MRT is very reliable. That means you are actually taking away your own responsibility. You're not being wise. You're just pushing the blame to the MRT, right? So I Ching is telling us that always look internally, and most people don't like this thing, right? Problem that's a point to outside, right? And then people also like to say this thing, oh, I follow the rules, and then this is according to the law. Understand, those are called man-made laws. Man-made laws have one major problem, and the problem is that they are not based on morals. They're based on laws. For example, now a man go and steal a woman's money. Of course, it's a crime, right? But what happened if this man never steal the woman's money? Instead, he gave this woman money. But he cheated the woman's love. He told her that he loved her, but actually he didn't love her. He just wanted to sleep with her. So this is called cheating of love. Cheating of love, is it a crime? Definitely it's not a crime. Now, the woman cannot go to the police and tell police, this guy stole my love. He said he loved me, but he didn't love me. And then the police will say, sorry, did he take your money, right? As to that he sleep with her, even both are adults in the willing basis, it's not a rape, so there's actually no case. So understand that that's the problem with the man-made laws. It's not based on morals. It's trying to follow the morals, but it's always behind. So I Ching is telling us about morals, right? Because I Ching is telling us about this thing called going with the flow, going with the morals. So I Ching is actually more powerful. And I have only 2 more minutes now. If any questions, you can always ask me by typing in the chat box, in the Facebook Live, and then I will answer you as much as possible, right? So people resist I Ching because they just find somehow it is not something that actually it sometimes hurts them. So at the end of the day, why am I so passionate about I Ching? Very, very simple. I myself have benefited a lot from I Ching. In fact, I have been using I Ching without realizing. In fact, everyone, the whole world is using I Ching without realizing. The people watching right now, please look at the buttons on your shirt. Whether man or woman, you got buttons on the shirt, right? Blouse also got buttons, right? You realize that they're always in odd numbers. For example, t-shirt has 7 buttons, including one on top, right? If it's a shorter shirt, let's say a child shirt, it will be in 5 buttons. And if it's a coat, it will be either in 1 button or 3 buttons. It is always odd number. The whole world, the tailors all operate the same way. You go to any clothing store, whether it's in Africa, in China, Tibet, it's all the same odd number buttons. And if you go to the funeral wake, you see the person lying inside the coffin. Of course, you can't go and count the number of buttons. You have to ask the undertaker, right? My friend is an undertaker. His company is called the Zhen Haichuan, right? Direct Funeral Services. So you go and count the corpse, the person died that lies inside the coffin. How many buttons on the shirt? You realize that it is always even number. So you can't take a living shirt and then put on the dead person. You can't, because you have to adjust the number of buttons. Why? Because odd number is about yang. Even number is yin. And we are living, we are alive people, living people, we are called yang. And dead people is called yin. So that's why the whole world number of buttons is always odd number. It cannot be even number. So in other words, we are already using I Ching every day without realizing. That's all for me today. It's only 30 minutes. I will cover that more in next week. Exact day, I will post on Facebook. With that, I thank you for watching, and I wish you have a good working week. Thank you. Bye-bye.